Roman Catholic Diocese of Viseu. The Portuguese Catholic Diocese of Viseu is a suffragan of the archdiocese of Braga. Its see at Viseu is in the Centro Region. The current bishop is António Luciano dos Santos Costa. History. The see at Viseu dates from the 6th century and including the doubtful prelates, and was elected but not confirmed. It has had 83 bishops. The list begins with remittal 572-585 who attended the Second Council of Braga, but was exiled by the Arian king Leovigild. Lunillus succeeded him and abjured Arianism at the Third Council of Toledo. Bishops of Viseu were present at the 4th, 6th, 8th, 12th, and 13th Councils of Toledo. There was a vacancy of 15 years from 665 to 680. Diofredo was bishop in 693. Then, following the Muslim conquest, Viseu remained without a bishop for nearly 2 centuries. Theodomiro assisted at the consecration of the Church of Santiago de Compostela in 876 and at the Council of Oviedo in 877 and was followed by Gundimiro in 905. In this century Viseu was under Islamic rule for 76 years, and at first had no bishop, but afterwards its prelates, Gomes and Cisnando 1020-1064, resided in Oviedo. From 1110 to 1144 the diocese was governed by priors appointed by the bishops of Coimbra in virtue of a bull of Pope Paschal Roman II. Among them was Saint Theotonius, afterwards patron of the city. The line of bishops began again with Odorio. Nicolau 1192, a future canon regular, studied in Paris and then met the future Pope Innocent Roman III, who after his election to the papacy received him at Rome and recommended him to the Queen for his learning and modesty. Moutinho was appointed in 1230. After his death the see remained vacant until 1250, when Pedro Gonçalves was confirmed in it. Matters said 1254 took part in the long conflicts between Crown and Church, which had begun in the reign of King Afonso Roman II, and in defence of ecclesiastical immunities went with other bishops to Rome, dying at Wittenberg. After 8 years, during which Portugal was under interdicts, Matthias Roman II filled the see, and he was followed by Egas at 1259, an active reformer, and Moutinho Roman II 1313. This prelate carried out important work in the cathedral, which dates at least from 830, when King Ferdinand the Great recaptured the city from the Moors. It was almost reconstructed early in the 12th century. Gonçalo de Figueiredo 1323, who had been married before entering church service, is remembered as the founder of many noble families. His successor Miguel Vivas 1330 served as Chancellor to Afonso Roman IV. After João Roman III 1375, of good memory, came 2 prelates, Pedro Roman II and João Roman IV, whose rule was brief on account of the Great Schism, the former being deposed by Pope Urban VIII. A 5th Joe followed in the see in 1392 and, being highly esteemed by the king, was chosen godfather of Prince Henry the Navigator and received from the monarch the gift of a Roman tower for the cathedral bells. Luís do Amaral, the only bishop native of the city, represented Portugal at the Council of Basel and, embracing the cause of the antipope Felix V, was sent on various embassies. He returned, however, to the lawful obedience before his death. Luís Coutinho Roman II 1438 was promoted to the Diocese of Coimbra in 1446, being followed by João Vicente, founder of the Loyos, a congregation of secular canons of St. John, who was known as the Holy Bishop. He reformed the Order of Christ and gave it new statutes by order of Prince Henry, Duke of Viseu, the Grand Master. Cardinal d'Albadruna, the richest and most influential of Portuguese prelates, lived at Rome from 1479 and dying there in 1508 was buried in his splendid chapel in Santa Maria del Popolo. Diego Ortiz de Villegas 1507, a Castilian, was confessor of 3 kings and renowned as a theologian, orator, and astrologer. He took part in the junta called by King Manuel to consider the offer Christopher Columbus had made to discover the sea route to the Indies by sailing west and procured its rejection, which transferred from Portugal to Spain the European discovery of America. He built a new and splendid front to the cathedral and consecrated it in June 1560. In 1520, at the age of 11, Cardinal Infante Afonso, 6th son of King Manuel I, became Bishop-elect of Viseu, and in his time books began to be kept for the registration of births, deaths, and marriages, a custom afterwards enjoined by the Council of Trent. He was followed, among others, by Cardinal Miguel da Silva 1527 and Cardinal Alessandro Fornis 1547, who never came to the diocese of which he was the administrator, a function he resigned in 1552. Gonçalo Pinheiro, appointed in consistory by Pope Julius Roman III on June 27, 1552, classical scholar, ambassador to France, and subsequently bishop, held a synod in 1555, and made notable additions to the cathedral. He died in November 1557. Jorge de Ate, appointed on July 23, 1568, assisted at the Council of Trent and in the reform of the Missal and Breviary, and built the cathedral sacristy and part of the bishop's palace. Of noble family and a pious prelate, he refused 4 archbishoprics and left his residuary estate to the poor. Miguel de Castro, 1579, also a noble, was viceroy of Portugal during the Philippine dynasty and renowned for honest deeds. On his transfer to the archdiocese of Lisbon, Nuno de Noronha, son of the Count of Odemira, became bishop 1585 and built the seminary, doing the same for the Diocese of Gouda, to which he was promoted. He was a notable reformer of the clergy and lived like the great Fidalgo he was. The Dominican and Greek scholar António de Sousa, 1595, ruled only 2 years, being followed by João de Bragança, a model courtier and prelate, who gave his wealth to the poor. João Emanuel, 1610, son of the Count of Costa, after a personal visitation of the diocese in 1611, drew up constitutions which were approved at the synod in 1614, and he subsequently became Archbishop of Lisbon and Viceroy. João de Portugal, 1626, a Dominican of noble birth and saintly life, made a visitation of the diocese, and finding most of his people ignorant of Christian doctrine, wrote and distributed a summary of it. It was remarked that he gave nothing to his relations, saying that the income of the diocese should be spent upon it and his children, the poor. Bernardino de Sena, 1629, a Franciscan, had held important posts in his order in different parts of Portugal, where he travelled on foot begging alms, and he had refused 2 mitres. Becoming general, he lived at Madrid with free entry to the palace, although dressed in rags. Pope Urban Roman named him Minister General, and at the age of 58, when he had visited and governed 6,000 convents and 280,000 subjects, King Philip presented him to the See of Viseu. Miguel de Castro, Roman, for 1633, never took possession, but Denis de Milo y Castro, 1636, in his 2 years' rule was diligent in his pastoral office, especially in visitations, and was a great benefactor of the misericordias of the diocese. For the next 32 years the see remained vacant, owing to the war with Spain following on the restoration of Portuguese independence. Through Spanish pressure, the popes refused to confirm the prelates named by King John Roman IV, and during 11 years Portugal and his empire had only 1 bishop, the others, appointed under the Philips, having died. This energetic man, who lived until 109, is said to have ordained 20,000 priests and confirmed 1,000,000 persons. Finally peace was made with Spain, and in 1671 Manuel de Saldan had become bishop but died 3 months later, and in 1673 João de Mello, a noble and man of greatest austerity, succeeded. He rebuilt the chancel of the cathedral, convened a synod in 1681, added to the constitutions of the diocese, and employed the oratorians in giving missions. Ricardo Russell, an Englishman, chaplain to Queen Catherine of Braganza, wife of Charles Roman II of England, was translated from the Diocese of Porto Alegre in 1685 and established that congregation in Viseu. He left the reputation of being a man of zeal and illustration, and though a severe disciplinarian, of ready wit. Geronimo, source 1694, a benefactor of the Misericordia, convoked the synod in 1699 and reformed the diocesan constitutions and those of many brotherhoods and confraternities. After his death the see remained vacant 20 years owing to differences between King João V and Rome. In 1740 Julio Francisco de Oliveira was appointed. José do Menino Jesus, 1783, a Carmelite, was a lover of art, as he showed by the statues he presented to the cathedral. He made 2 visitations of the diocese and was succeeded by Francisco de Esvidos, 1792, a prelate of great modesty and charity, who instituted 5 suburban parishes annexed to the cathedral and subsidized the rectors out of his own funds. He gave a new organ costing 20,000 cruzados to the cathedral and laid the foundation stone of the new hospital of the Misericordia. This rule was troubled by the Peninsular War, and in 1810 British troops occupied his palace and other ecclesiastical buildings. Francisco Alexander Lobo, 1810, was minister under King Miguel and, when the Liberals triumphed in 1834, had to emigrate to France, where he remained 10 years. The new government refused to recognize the Vicar General to whom he had confided the diocese, naming another, which gave rise to a schism. José David de Cervera y Sousa, 1859, abandoned the diocese through his inability to secure obedience from his priests in the matter of clerical dress, and was followed by António Alves Martins, 1862, a Franciscan who espoused the liberal cause and fought in the civil war against King Miguel. He dedicated his life to politics and was journalist, deputy, peer, and prime minister.
He was a strong opponent of the papal infallibility at the First Vatican Council, and his independence gained him the admiration of the Portuguese liberals, who erected a statue of him in Viseu. He was followed by José Dias Correa de Carvalho 1883, translated from the See of Cabo Verde, where he was the first bishop to visit all the churches of the archipelago. António Alves Ferreira dos Santos was his immediate successor.